All right, how's everyone doing? Well, we've made it to the final block of our breakout sessions on the first day. Everyone still looks in good spirits, which is good. We do want to welcome you to this last session here of the breakout sessions. Today we will have the Michael J. Fox Foundation be talking to us about their Adolescence. So Nick Hughes and Yifan Chi will be here. If we could give them a round of applause as they come up.
Hi everyone, I'm Nick.
I'm Yifan.
And we're here from the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research. So we'd like to start just with a brief story about the time we sent an event solicitation letter to a dead person. So basically what happened was our events team saved their VIP invitee list on a spreadsheet saved on the server. And when someone on that list passed away, their name did not get removed from there, even though they were marked deceased in our CRM. We had workflows for all that. Oh, and this was the father of one of our board members, so we definitely heard about it. So the point of that story is these are the types of perils that you can run into when you use manual workflows to run your business. So we're going to talk to you today about some strategies you can employ to automate your workflows and implement an analytical framework that will hopefully help prevent something like that from happening to your organization. So a bit of brief background on the Fox Foundation. It was founded in the year 2000 by, any guesses? Actor Michael J. Fox. You might know Michael from his movies or his TV shows. What you may not know is that he actually lived with Parkinson's disease for nearly a decade before disclosing his diagnosis publicly in 1998. And because of his experience as a Parkinson's patient, when he founded the Fox Foundation, he did so with one clear and urgent goal: to accelerate meaningful therapies and ultimately find a cure for Parkinson's disease.
Since inception, we have funded over $800 million on high-impact Parkinson's research projects. However, as Michael often says, the science is ahead of the money, meaning there are more good scientific ideas out there than there's money to fund them. This urgent fundraising need and constant ambition to scale our impact places the most importance on finding the most efficient and impactful ways to raise money. This is where people like us use Domo to innovate the operational functions of the foundation in order to grow fundraising revenue.
And unfortunately, Michael's not here to tell us stories from Hollywood parties in the 1980s, so that's where we'll focus our presentation. So, quick question. How many people here are one of or among the only analysts at your organization? Okay, so those of you that raise your hands, you'll empathize with us when we say that when we started using Domo at the beginning of 2016, we had exactly one formally trained analyst on staff at the Fox Foundation. And because of this, our early Domo stages were really based on building out baseline reporting and socializing the platform across the foundation to get buy-ins from different teams to use Domo.
A key objective of our early stage was to centralize analytics across the foundation. The idea was to take manual and repetitive tasks that were previously done in silos by multiple members of different teams and have the Domo analyst figure out a way to automate, or at least standardize them. At the time, we had a revenue reporting system that required several members of our fundraising team to spend part of their days looking at checks and figuring out how they should be coded in our CRM. They would then track weekly revenue through a spreadsheet and save a new copy on our server every week. The biggest issue with this type of system was the opportunity cost of having our fundraisers spending their time coding GIFs, but not reaching out to and meeting with potential donors.
The structure we employed when we first started using Domo looked a little something like this. We called it a hub and spoke model. The basic idea was you'd have a core analytics team composed of trained statisticians that would serve as the hub of the wheel, and spokes composed of power user representatives from each functional team that was using Domo. Actually, if you were here at Domopalooza in 2017, you might have seen our colleague Luba Smolensky present on the benefits of this type of structure. And it was very beneficial as we first started using the platform. It helped us to standardize reporting across different teams, learn and share best practices among the analysts who were learning Domo together, and get buy-in from multiple teams at the foundation by having a member of each team directly invested in analytics. This was the structure that we employed during what we call our phase 1 with Domo. And as you can see from the slide, it lasted until about the end of 2017. And around this time, continued foundation growth and a shift in analytics team structure required us to reimagine how we structured analytics at our foundation. We actually shifted models from centralized to decentralized. Looks something like this. And instead of having a core analytics team of very few analysts, we had a reporting and data governance working group composed of analysts who sit on different functional teams. This is the structure we've been using in what we're calling our phase 2 with Domo. And as you can see from the slide, it's ongoing. We'll share a little more about this structure later. So we haven't always been jumping for joy, but we have cleared some major hurdles in our first few years of using Domo, upon which we continue to iterate. Perhaps one of the most important accomplishments was achieving buy-in from multiple teams across the foundation to invest the time and resources required to use Domo and make it valuable to them. At the Fox Foundation, we have a staff of 140 employees. And the roles we have on staff are as varied as PhD researcher to web developer, marketing analyst to grassroots fundraiser. And our most complex projects require collaboration across multiple teams. Yifan and I have found that 140 employees is small enough that it's possible to scope solutions to problems that we face, but large enough where implementing solutions to challenges affects teams' workflows in significant and often unpredictable ways. This all makes change possible but difficult to implement. So because of this, when we first started using Domo, one of our key objectives was to achieve buy-in from key leadership team members. Particularly, we focused on the organization's co-founder, who oversees the fundraising, marketing, and communications teams. We held bi-weekly meetings with her during our first year and a half using the platform, and this allowed us to form an intimate understanding of what the C-suite's analytical priorities were, and also gather constant feedback on the progress we made. Additionally, having the co-founder understand the value and be a Domo supporter provided us with a key evangelizer who could help drive the analytics revolution that was needed at the foundation.
Another key win from our Domo phase 1 is an organizational-wide trend towards embracing data-informed decision-making. Obviously, Fox Foundation would not have achieved the success it has without being a data-driven organization. However, the institution of Domo has led to a more collaborative approach towards using data to inform strategy across different teams. The key distinction has been the availability of data to inform workflows for employees at all levels across the foundation. Whereas in the past, data was only available to organizational leadership, the Domo platform has allowed us to democratize data to all Fox Foundation employees who are eager to work smarter and more efficiently.
We've mentioned earlier how Domo has helped us become more collaborative around analytical priorities. And whereas in the pre-Domo years, we often had siloed teams working in isolation to accomplish their own objectives, we now have a collaborative network of Domo analysts, power users, and team leaders. We all work together to source and share information through Domo. This network has helped us accomplish some key objectives, some key wins in 2018 that we'll share a little more about later, and we have many more in the works for 2019.
Lastly, one of the most valuable wins from our Domo Phase 1 has been a gift that keeps on giving, an ongoing shift from manual to automated processes. It used to be a common process at Fox Foundation to have entire roles whose scope and function was exacting manual and repetitive tasks. However, we have successfully leveraged Domo to automate several of these processes. Here on the slide is one of our marketing dashboards that automated a significant number of reporting needs for our marketing team. Chances are everyone sitting here has at some point had a job that required you to do same or similar tasks very frequently. Automating this type of workflows via Domo is very straightforward to increase productivity and derive benefit from the platform. In most cases, the upfront cost of putting in the effort to automate the activity is far outweighed by the long-term benefit brought by having the automation. We'll provide a detailed example that illustrates the value of automating this type of workflows a little bit later.
So these successes haven't come with significant challenges, of course, and some of which we're still trying to overcome. Perhaps the most persistent of these is behind me on this slide. Has anyone here had a team member or close employee leave their organization within the past few months? Yeah, this problem isn't particular to MGFF, and it's difficult to eliminate staff turnover entirely, but there are some steps you can take to mitigate its risks. So earlier I referenced this hub and spoke model that we employed when we first started using Domo. Again, this was comprised of a core analytics team with trained statisticians on board and power users who represented each functional team. And as more and more teams became integrated with the platform, this structure worked. We just add more spokes to the wheel. However, when both members of our analytics team left the foundation or shifted to new roles, this structure was completely crippled. As I shared earlier, rather than replacing these roles directly, we shifted structure from centralized to decentralized. And in this model, each analyst serves as an in-house expert on his or her team, tasked with both understanding the business practices and key priorities of the team and employing the technical acumen to run analytics for the team and work together with the other network of analysts on more complex initiatives. In this structure, we leverage the strength of our analyst network. We recognize that not a single one of us can understand the entire business intelligence stack completely, but together we can form a cohesive whole that can successfully govern analytics at the foundation. And if your organization is just starting your Domo journey, this structure might not be as applicable, but we've found at the Fox Foundation it helps us to democratize analytics and guard against staff turnover.
We chatted a few slides ago about the challenges of using manual Excel reports for core organizational reporting system. At Fox Foundation, we had a severe case of manual Excel reporting syndrome. Each team was managing their own workflows with their own reports, and of course, those reports did not talk to each other and were updated manually. Whenever those teams needed to collaborate, they would set up a meeting and compare spreadsheets. Often the numbers would not match for unreconcilable reasons. This is obviously extremely inefficient, but for our foundation, this also led us making some disastrous mistakes, such as the story Nick mentioned at the beginning of our presentation. Learning our lesson the hard way from incidents like this, we have successfully migrated many workflows out of spreadsheets and into Domo and our CRM, but we still have some more work to do in 2019.
Another challenge we face is that many of our early Domo pages started to look like this and became pretty disorganized as we added more and more cards to satisfy individual requests from users. Has anyone here dealt with card clutter in your Domo instance? Yeah, okay, I see some hands. You have to admit it. It's it stems from one of the strengths of the Domo platform, because the flexibility of the platform allows you to answer so many different analytical questions. designing elegant dashboards that draw your users' attention to the core business question they should be focusing on. It's an art we're still trying to perfect. But a quick win you can use to help mitigate this is migrating your traditional Domo pages over to dashboards via the Design Dashboard button, which you can find in the Page Options wrench in the top right corner. Shifting your traditional Domo pages over to dashboards automatically integrates the cards together, making them more interactive and allowing your users to interpret the data on the page more cohesively.
Lastly, a challenge I believe everyone can relate to. Out of the countless projects on my radar, how do I make sure I'm working on the most impactful one? How do I balance working on short and long-term priorities? In our team, we try to employ frameworks for tackling this persistent challenge. One of our favorites is the Eisenhower decision matrix, which separates all our tasks into 4 buckets. Things that are both urgent and important, which you should do immediately. Things that are important but not very urgent, which you should set aside time to prioritize doing. Things that are urgent but not very important, which you should either delegate or do it after you finish all the important tasks. Things that are neither important nor urgent, which you should eliminate entirely. There are many other frameworks that can apply similar goals. It doesn't so much matter which one you apply. What's important is for you to be consistent and apply the frameworks that can help you make decisions around what to work on and when.
So in spite of these challenges, we've been pushing through and we've put in place a solid trend towards smarter and more efficient processes. A lot of this has been thanks to the team that Yifan and I work on, DORA. DORA stands for Development Operations and Revenue Analytics. We're a relatively new team at the Fox Foundation. We were only formalized in 2017. And we serve as problem solvers for various teams across the organization. Specifically, we're tasked with both understanding the fundraising team's priorities and their business practices, and employing the technical skills to tackle any challenges they face. Our team's goal is to scale foundation revenue by reducing the amount of time that our fundraisers spend on non-revenue generating tasks, implementing improvements to our fundraising and stewardship processes, and figuring out the smartest way to spend our next dollar. And yes, we proudly use Dora the Explorer as our mascot.
So our DORA team innovates around the key levers associated with development operations, including 6 functions on the slide. So we help to answer questions like, what data should revenue line managers be looking at on a regular basis? How do I make sure critical business operations are understood and adopted by key affected stakeholders? What software do we provide our revenue lines to make them more efficient? By implementing all these functions, our team is driving the change of the whole foundation to become more efficient and effective on fundraising operations.
A lot of our team's main accomplishments can be boiled down into some of these buckets you see behind me. Firstly, as we referenced a few times, we have banished Excel among our fundraisers. Excel can be a great program for crunching numbers, data analysis, but we found it's just not optimized for managing long-term workflows, especially for a sales team. So to combat this, we've been working with our fundraising teams, as Yifan mentioned, migrate their Excel-based workflows into sustainable platforms like Domo and automate them when we can. And this approach is paying off, and it was evidenced in 2018 when the foundation achieved a record fundraising year of over $124 million raised. So in the last part of our presentation, we'd like to share with you a few case studies that highlight specific projects we've worked on related to some of the themes we've been talking about today. Our first case study relates to one of our team's core values: automate yourself out of the job. We've referenced this principle a few times today, but its importance really can't be overstated. If you have manual repetitive tasks that you spend a little bit of time on each day, take the extra time to automate them as much as you can, turn them into automated workflows. The benefit will pay off in the long term. One project we worked on in the last year that particularly demonstrated the value of this approach was when we went to use Domo to automate our daily major gifts email. This was an email that was sent out every day to foundation leadership and members of all the fundraising teams, and it listed all the significant donations that were received on the previous day. So this was an important business practice that we did not want to disrupt. The problem was, it was nearly one person's entire job to format and send this email every day. And that required this poor individual to code all the gifts correctly in Salesforce, run Salesforce reports that would format the gifts together, export these reports into Excel and format them into these neat little tables, copy and paste the tables into an email template, and then send that email to the same group of people at the same time every single day. As you can probably tell, this wasn't the most stimulating job. And in fact, in my 3+ years at the foundation, I saw 3 full employees come and go completely in this role. The good news was, the repetitive nature of the task meant it was primed for automation.
And now with Domo, we move the daily report to a Domo page. And here we will introduce a very useful function provided by Domo, schedule as report. I don't know if you ever use it or not. Basically, this button allows you to schedule your Domo page or card to be sent to any users at any time you would like to. This function actually makes our daily report a completely automatic process. So every day at 10 a.m., a draft report will be sent to a small group of users to check if the gifts are coded correctly. If there are any discrepancies, they would update in our CRM. The data flow in the backend runs every hour to capture all the updates. And finally, at 5 p.m. every day, a final report will be delivered to a selected group of users' email inboxes. The whole process is completely automatic, and we are now saving several hours for our team members. As you can see, this report automation frees up lots of teams' time and resources, and also eliminates errors caused by manual input. Moreover, this process empowers users with the ability to review reports and update discrepancies in our CRM. An extra benefit from this process is flexibility, for the report can be scheduled to be sent at any time, and the content is very easy to add or remove.
And no one's happier about this than our colleague Gray, who no longer has to send this email every day. The next case study we want to share with you relates to one of our team's favorite expressions: don't let perfect be the enemy of good. This phrase speaks to the importance of designing a minimum viable product, an MVP, and putting it out there in the world for it to be tested, broken, just generally interacted with by the people who are meant to be using it. Accepting that not everything you work on has to be perfect right away, and that there is such a thing as good enough, that will give you access to the greatest gift of all, user feedback. One project we worked on last year that proved how valuable this perspective could be is something that came to be known as the Heatmap. The Heatmap started at Fox Foundation out of a request from our senior leadership for our team to design a tool that would help our fundraisers identify the most potentially impactful locations for them to host foundation events. Over the past 5+ years, the Fox Foundation has invested significantly in our marketing capabilities, and we've scaled the size of our CRM both in terms of number of constituents as well as the number of data points we're collecting on these constituents. However, despite this wealth of information at our fundraisers' fingertips, their strategy for choosing event locations at times resembled this. And this was particularly true for events called salons, which are small, intimate gatherings during which we try to connect with people who have a high affinity to Parkinson's disease and a high capacity for philanthropic support, but who aren't well acquainted with the Fox Foundation. When our team started to scope the Heatmap project, we learned that the fundraiser's strategy for choosing salon locations was sometimes as simple as, our board member offered to host a salon at his house, so we'd go there. Or we knew there were 2 or 3 wealthy Parkinson's patients who lived in this community, so we'll go there. but we wanted to design a tool that would leverage the wealth of data we were collecting in our CRM to help our fundraisers make smarter and more data-informed decisions.
We now leverage Domo to develop a location ranking like this. As you can see, the visualization is not perfect because this is pretty new, it's our MVP, and we are still working on optimizing it. As Nick mentioned before, what we value is do not let perfect be the enemy of good. So we started to showcase this tool to multiple team members and gradually optimize it based on users' comments and feedbacks. So take a closer look at the location ranking because we did it on 2 levels, city and zip code. So we are able to answer questions like, if like to host a salon event, which city shall we go? Or if like to do a salon event in Chicago, which area in Chicago shall we go? Next question you guys might be curious about is how we generate the location ranking. We actually utilized a simplified linear model that I believe you can all apply. The first step is just to brainstorm the variables we need to consider when choosing locations for event. And then we will select top variables and check data range to remove the outliers. Next step is just to weight the variables by importance and normalize the scoring. The last step is just to use Domo to create rankings. In this model, we also incorporate third-party data such as per capita income and age populations from the US Census, which you can easily get from Domo App Store. And Domo Beast Mode is a great tool to help you calculate scoring and create rankings.
So those of you that were at the general session today might have noticed some similarities between this Heatmap and that Flexmap. That's a custom Domo app. You can consider this the nonprofit budget model. But we have been getting a lot of value out of it. We've been using this tool to work with our fundraisers throughout this year to help them plan and execute their upcoming events. So our last case study today relates to a very basic principle, that time is your scarcest resource. And the meaning of this phrase is simple. You only have a finite number of hours in each day. If you're not spending them on the most potentially impactful tasks, you could be doing yourself and your organization a disservice. When our team undertook a project to build an automated lead segmentation process, this principle was at the very heart of the project. Our objective was to try to identify the most promising potential donors who were hiding amongst the more than 1 million unfamiliar records in our CRM and bring them to the attention of our fundraisers. Historically, lead generation at the Fox Foundation has been very limited. Of course, our fundraisers would receive tips about wealthy Parkinson's patients, and they might even find that person in our CRM and have contact information for them. But there was no system. There was no system to identify these people actively. The Fox Foundation has been able to scale revenue significantly in spite of this because of our innovative model, the Michael J. Fox brands, and also our well-connected network. Over the course of our 20-year history, chances are good if there was a wealthy Parkinson's patient that they'd be introduced to us sooner rather than later. However, with over 1 million Parkinson's patients in the United States alone and 60,000 new diagnoses each year, we see this as a tremendous missed opportunity. And in order to continue scaling revenue, we want to design an active lead segmentation process that would leverage the huge amount of data we're collecting in our CRM.
As Nick mentioned before, since we are collecting a huge amount of information on our constituents via marketing efforts, we'd love to use all this data to develop a model that can help us to find those highest potential individuals so that we can assign our marketing resources more reasonably and make sure our relationship managers really focus on the right prospects who truly care about our foundation and also have the ability to provide philanthropic support. So, what kind of leads are ideal for us? We believe prospects who are scored high in these 3 indicators should get full and immediate attention: affinity, capacity, and intention. So how to score affinity? We actually internal data to develop a scoring model very similar with what we mentioned before for Heatmap. So those who have connections to Parkinson's disease and also engage with our various marketing initiatives should be scored high in Affinity. Again, Domo Beast Mode can assist you to develop a very simple linear model for this. In terms of capacity and intention, we just leverage third-party data from Wealth Intelligence platform to get the ratings. Finally, combining those three criteria together, we are able to locate those highest potential individuals and track conversions to measure success.
And this project is already bearing fruit as Yifan has been providing high-quality lead lists to our fundraisers. They've been reaching out to, meeting with, and even receiving donations from these people. And I think we got another one today. So what's next for the Fox Foundation? In 2019, we're focusing on continuing to iterate upon some of these really important projects we've shared with you today, as well as driving forward other key initiatives by using Domo as an open source platform to facilitate collaboration across our foundation.
Last are some key takeaways. So in terms of prioritizing projects, we should always focus on the highest value generation activities, because time is your scarcest resource. And also leverage development operations to do all your reporting, strategy, administrative work to let your sales team really focus on revenue growth. This is what our Dora team does, and perhaps similar model can also benefit your organization.
Additionally, spend the extra time needed to take any manual repetitive tasks you work on every day and turn them into automated processes. You might find, as we have, that Domo is an excellent tool through which you can automate yourself out of your job. And lastly, leverage Domo to make data standardized and available to everyone at your organization. We found that democratizing data in this way has helped foster a culture of collaboration and trust. So these principles have been hugely beneficial to us at the Fox Foundation. We thank you so much for your time and attention. We hope you might derive some benefit from them as well.
All right, great job, Nick and Yifan. So we'll now move to the Q&A portion of this session, and kind of the format we'll do is if you have a question, raise your hand, and we will bring a microphone to you. That way, the question gets recorded for the video so you can reference it later. So raise your hand, and I will do my best to get everyone answered.
Hi, great presentation. Thank you for sharing. I guess two questions, one tactical, one a little more behavioral. One, you mentioned moving everything to the dashboards versus the collections, and I was just curious, any cons that you found from doing that, or would you just recommend everybody move to that? The second was, for those of us with bigger functions and system admins that are traditionally siloed within them, I'm curious in your organizational model of moving the analysts out to those functions, if you've seen any, call it backsliding, in terms of they're just focused in their silo, not what's in the best interest of the overall business.
Do you want to take the first one? So I really don't think there's much of a downside. We haven't experienced really downside to using the dashboards. It ties the cards together. So if you haven't used it yet, if you have similar fields on multiple cards on the dashboard, you can really be navigating the page together and seeing how those interactions, how the cards interact together. And so it saves you a step from having to click into each individual page, and you might draw insights in the aggregate as well. And the second question, it's tricky. We're kind of in a sweet spot right now where our analyst network works. We're diligent about having bi-monthly reporting data governance meetings when we try to norm on what the highest priorities are. But honestly, there might come a time in the future when the Fox Foundation is larger, and it might make sense to have a core analytics team driving forward and being fully responsible for it. We found especially dealing with staff turnover and also shifting priorities, having one analytics team to answer to maybe 5 or 6 executives can get a little challenging. So we try to have our analysts work together, form a good working group, and together they can drive the most important projects forward.
So following up on that, for the core team, I think you said you had 2,
Yep.
and then you've now gone to 5 or so. First, did Domo and the approach that you guys morphed into through a cultural, did that actually give you the ability to get to the team that you have now? In other words, we don't have the subject matter expert embedded the way you are now. We're more the core team, but we want to get there. And we're just getting started with Domo. So the question would be, did that make the catalyzation to get there easier? And then secondly, do you take those subject matter expert analytical team members and rotate them at all for cross-training?
So I'll actually do the second one first. We don't do any rotation. Everyone's pretty busy on their own teams, and that'd be an interesting theory actually, but we don't have any kind of rotation program for the analysts. To your first question, I think the key development was, and this might have been because we started as a centralized model. When we started as centralized, we knew what the big priorities were, and we had some people whose purview it was to drive those forward, so it wasn't going to fall off their radar. So they knew they were the analytics team, they were driving things forward, and we were a little smaller then too. We were probably 120 employees. The key development was having those power users basically turn into analysts, or having those teams hire their own analysts. And the development here is each team feels sufficiently powered to manage their own analytical priorities. So the reason why it worked for us is probably because we started small, started with that core network, and then that allowed us to that provided the foundation, and we had enough people with the familiarity where we can get away with governing by committee, basically.
Thank you for a great presentation. I've got 2 questions, if I may. When you were importing your data into Domo, did you have much of a challenge with dirty data and duplications? And the second question I have is, with Salesforce, did you turn off your Salesforce reporting and dashboards when you introduced Domo?
So we definitely have had dirty data issues. You'll find some APIs are definitely better than others. There are some API connectors where the way you set it up is just not how it appears in Domo, and you kind of have to figure out another way to do it. We're running into that right now with our finance software. We're trying to integrate into Domo, and there's an API issue. We haven't turned off Salesforce reporting. We found it has some utility as well. Salesforce is literally real time, right? So there's some things our fundraisers need right away. One thing actually now that relates to our presentation, when someone is deceased now, our fundraisers get an alert. So anything they have stored on their, in their email or anything like that that has that person's name, they automatically get an email that someone in their portfolio was marked deceased, and there's no excuse anymore. So Salesforce, we found Salesforce has some utility. Reporting-wise, it's limited, but it does have some utility as well.
Hi there. Sorry. So my question was on decentralization. You talked about empowering the people on the individual teams to do their own analytics. Were there challenges associated with moving to that model in terms of data flow access and those kinds of credentials, and also in terms of overarching strategy and moving away from that kind of top-down approach?
There definitely have been some challenges. In terms of access, we basically anyone who's an analyst at our org is a Domo admin. So we don't have, this is actually a con of the approach. We don't have like a real Domo admin. So everyone who's an analyst has the ability to change every user, and we're small enough where we can get away with that, and our analysts are highly trained and know not to do anything that's not with the purview of their own team. In terms of, I think your question, it gets back to that idea of we're at the right size now, and our cadence is solid enough where we're able to stay normed on what the biggest initiatives are. But a lot of times, for instance, last year, we had a roadmap for different projects we were going to work on in 2018, and our CEO came in halfway through the year and implemented that we needed to work on a security and access project, and that was decreed as a huge priority. So we try to keep, I think a lot of that stems from, we try to keep our C-suite executives engaged. We try to have them, they're constantly checking Domo. We try to build reports that are valuable and relevant to them. And because of that, there's enough of a cadence, enough of a conversation where we're able to stay normed on what the most important priorities are.
Excellent presentation. With regard to Excel, what was your experience in releasing the white knuckle death grip on the spreadsheets? And what were some of the methods that you used? And maybe that wasn't your experience. We are heavily Excel based, and we even see with our analysts that it's going to be difficult to get them to conceptually shift into more of a visual model and not having to do all the data gymnastics themselves.
It's hard. It's really hard. So the story that I opened the presentation with, that was there was a pretty strong message sent after that from our foundation leadership that people needed to migrate their workflows out of Excel. But still, we were scoping a project the other week where our fundraising teams were using Excel. And the approach we try to take is, you can't just say no more Excel and not give them an alternative. So we try to scope what the solution will be in Domo, work with them to make sure it's addressing all of their business needs, and give them the context of how this will be better. So for instance, migrating that spreadsheet related to the story I told, migrating that event invitation spreadsheet into Excel. They do that anytime something gets updated. They don't have to worry about putting in new data. It's built into our Salesforce workflows. Also, they're not tracking their donations in that Excel anymore. That's all automated for them through our gift processing segments. So it's a bit of being firm, but also trying to put yourself in the user's perspective and trying to, as much as you can, make it clear what benefit they'll get from it to incentivize them to, they're going to have to put some work into change, definitely.
Hi. I have a question actually around that, because we had the same issue with some of my agency members as well. Do you think it's more of they feel more comfortable working in the formulas that they know in Excel, and that they just need more training in understanding, how to do beast mode and build out calculated fields within Domo itself? Do you think that that's maybe what it is?
We're new to just signed on, and we've tried to conceptually show them what it can do. We've got these deep dive demos. So trying to get them to identify a use case, for our core needs was a little bit painful. And they're very used to these very wide, flat sets of data that they dump out of our servicing system. And they use that as a source for all of their downstream reporting that reports out to our executive team. So we're trying to get our analyst folks to embrace the fact that you don't have to do all that work to get that output. We can get the data available for you and transform it. You can then do the modeling and stuff and come up with it once instead of repeating it every single month they have to do it or quarter. So for us, it's going to be definitely a mind shift that we're trying to encourage, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? All right, let's give Nick and Yvonne one more round of applause.
Thank you, everyone.